Buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into the world of Formula One. We've got this really interesting article from Marca. It's a Spanish sports publication, and they're all over this story about Red Bull Racing, and specifically their newest driver, Liam Lawson. We're talking about the pressure cooker, the expectations. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Because you have this team with such a legacy of winning, but their second drivers always seem to struggle.
Right, so let's rewind a bit, just for a little context. Obviously, Red Bull has been like the dominant force in F1 for what seems like forever. They've got championships to prove it, and everyone knows how aggressive they are. But all that success, it creates this insane amount of pressure, especially if you're the driver who's not Max Verstappen.
It's true, and you know this quote from Liam Lawson, it just stood out to me. He said, they call you at 7 a.m. to put pressure on you, and you know you're threatened with losing your career at 16. He's been with Red Bull's system for years, so he's seen it all firsthand.
Wow, 7 a.m. pressure calls. That's a whole other level. Talk about trial by fire, right?
Definitely. And Red Bull's no excuses culture. It's no secret. But you've got to remember, even a driver like Sergio Perez, who won races for them, couldn't quite meet their expectations.
So even winning isn't enough.
Not just winning, it's about consistently challenging Verstappen. That's the key difference.
Yeah.
Verstappen wasn't just winning races. He was faster than Perez in almost every qualifying session. I mean, look at the article. It's right there. And that puts you on the back foot right from the start.
So you're saying Lawson has a serious uphill battle ahead of him.
You could say that.
Okay, so who is this Liam Lawson? What makes him the guy that Red Bull's willing to bet on?
Well, he's described as this volcanic character. He's known for his aggressive driving style.
Okay.
He's only had 11 F1 races so far.
Right.
But he's shown real promise. He's even scored points driving for AlphaTauri.
Which is Red Bull's junior team.
Exactly.
And, you know, AlphaTauri isn't as competitive as Red Bull. So the fact that Lawson managed to get a 9th place finish in only his second race at Singapore, which is a notoriously tough street circuit. I mean, that tells you something.
For sure. It shows he can handle pressure.
Yeah.
And deliver results, even in a car that's not top tier. And again, this was only his second race.
Yeah, that's impressive. But it doesn't sound like Red Bull's giving him much of a honeymoon period.
Oh, not at all. The article quotes Helmut Marko, Red Bull's motorsport advisor, and he just lays down the law. No victories expected, but he must score points regularly.
Okay, that's direct.
And it gets even more to the point. He must be closer to Max than Checo was.
Wow, talk about setting the bar high.
Right.
Marco doesn't sugarcoat things, does he?
Nope.
But is it really fair to compare Lawson to Verstappen right out of the gate?
Maybe not fair, but that's the reality at Red Bull. They want a driver who can push Verstappen, not just follow in his wake.
So it sounds like Lawson's walking into a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Where second place just isn't good enough.
Yeah. It's a tough environment for sure. No doubt about it. And that's where Lawson's grit comes in. And his determination. The article talks about his journey through these really competitive series, like DTM and Super Formula. It wasn't always a smooth ride, but he fought his way to the top.
Makes sense. I mean, you don't just waltz into Formula One, especially not with a team like Red Bull. They want winners plain and simple.
Exactly. Which brings us to Lawson's driving style. The article keeps using this word volcanic to describe him.
Volcanic. Okay, so I'm picturing some serious on-track eruptions this season. But really, what does that even mean?
Well, it means he's aggressive. He's not afraid to take risks, to push the limits. The article actually mentions a few incidents where his driving led to some clashes with other drivers. There was that run-in with Fernando Alonso in Austin.
Oh, Alonso, a legend for sure, but also known for his, let's say, fiery personality. What happened there?
Well, Lawson made what they call a late lunge on Alonso, basically diving into a gap that wasn't really there. It resulted in contact. And there was a lot of debate afterwards about whether Lawson had been too aggressive.
So he's got that daring, risk-taking element to his driving. Is that something Red Bull encourages? Or are they going to want him to maybe tone it down a bit?
It's a tricky balance. Red Bull loves drivers who are fearless, who are willing to fight for every position. But they also need someone who can keep it clean, someone who can avoid making costly mistakes.
So it's like a tightrope walk for Lawson.
Exactly.
It's almost like you're looking for controlled chaos, right? Someone who can be aggressive, but also calculated.
You got it.
And that's what makes this whole situation so interesting. Can Lawson harness that volcanic energy and turn it into consistent results? Can he be the driver who pushes Verstappen, but also plays the team game?
That's the million-dollar question.
We talk about Marco telling him to accept Verstappen's superiority
Yeah.
and to just focus on his own development.
Right, and Jos Verstappen, Max's dad. He also had some interesting insights. You know he knows firsthand how tough it can be to be the teammate of a dominant driver. His advice to Lawson was basically to avoid getting caught up in a head-to-head battle with Max and just focus on learning as much as possible.
Sounds like pretty solid advice. I mean, trying to beat Verstappen at his own game right from the start, that could backfire spectacularly. But how do you find that balance?
Yeah.
You know, between learning and competing? Especially when you're at a team like Red Bull, where winning is everything.
It's a tough one, and honestly, it's something Lawson's going to have to figure out on his own. But remember, Red Bull's philosophy is all about results. They don't care about excuses, no matter how talented a driver might be.
So it sounds like Lawson's in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If he's too aggressive, he risks crashing out and upsetting the team. But if he's not aggressive enough, he'll be seen as lacking that killer instinct that Red Bull demands.
That's pretty much it.
It's a high-stakes game, and the margins for error are tiny.
They really are.
But let's not forget, that's what makes Formula One so exciting.
You're right.
The human element,
Yeah.
the personalities,
Yeah.
the rivalries.
It's all part of the drama.
Exactly. And speaking of drama, this article dropped some pretty eye-opening statistics about Perez's final season with Red Bull, which really highlight just how dominant Verstappen has become. I think those numbers are worth a closer look because they really show the magnitude of the challenge that Lawson is facing.
Okay, so let's break down those Perez statistics because they are pretty brutal.
Yeah, they really highlight Verstappen's dominance. It's all right there in the article. Verstappen outpaced Perez 23-1 in races. 23-1 in qualifying sessions. And get this, 9-0 in victories.
9-0 in victories. I mean, that's not just winning, that's total domination. And remember, Perez still won a couple of races that season. He had several podiums, too. He finished 8th in the driver's standings. It's not like he was a failure.
No, but it shows you how incredibly consistent Verstappen was. He was on another level, making even a seasoned driver like Perez look, well, almost outmatched. And the point totals, they tell the whole story. Verstappen with a whopping 437 points to Perez's 152. But for Red Bull, it wasn't enough. They want someone who can consistently challenge Verstappen, push him to the limit, not just settle for a few victories here and there.
That's the real test for Lawson. He can't just score points. He needs to be way closer to Verstappen's pace than Perez was. If not, well, he risks becoming another casualty of Red Bull's relentless pursuit of perfection.
It's a tall order. There's no doubt about it. But from everything we've seen in this article, it seems like Lawson at least has the right mentality. He's got that volcanic spirit, the grit, the determination, and he's clearly not afraid of pushing the limits.
And the fact that he's been in Red Bull's system since he was young, that might actually work to his advantage. He knows what they expect, he's not afraid of hard work, and he's used to the pressure.
So what does all this mean for Lawson, for Red Bull, and for the upcoming F1 season? It's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Absolutely. You know what I find intriguing? Can Lawson, with his aggressive style and that volcanic personality, push Verstappen in a way that Perez couldn't? Could that internal competition, even if Verstappen still comes out on top, actually elevate Red Bull's overall performance?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's not just about Lawson's individual results. It's about how his presence impacts the whole team dynamic. Can he find that sweet spot between being competitive and collaborative, pushing Verstappen, but also contributing to the team's success?
Or will Lawson's ambition clash with Red Bull's hierarchy? Will it cause friction and maybe even hurt their championship chances? These are the questions that keep us coming back to Formula One. It's not just about speed and technology. It's the human element, the personalities, the rivalries, the mind games. And this situation with Lawson, it's got all the makings of a captivating season.
For sure. It's going to be a wild ride, and we'll be here to break it all down as it unfolds. We've covered a lot of ground today, but the big question still remains, can Liam Lawson thrive in this pressure cooker? Can he break the mold and become the teammate Red Bull's been searching for? Let us know what you think, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive